In the Bible, a world filled with Hamas, that's the Hebrew word for violence, for bloodshed, for murder.
Have you ever stumbled upon a surprising connection between ancient texts and modern events? Hamas is quoted in the Bible and you didn't know. See, what the Bible says about Hamas might sound like a startling headline, but it opens up an intriguing dialogue. Dive into an unexpected linguistic journey where words bridge millennia, ideologies, and cultures. Let's unravel this curious intertwining of the modern Middle Eastern political landscape with ancient biblical narratives. Ready for an eye-opener? The linguistic connection. Language is not just a medium for communication. It often serves as a historical tapestry, weaving together past and present narratives in ways that can be both enlightening and startling. The connection between the word Hamas in contemporary geopolitical discourse and its appearances in ancient biblical texts is a striking example of this linguistic phenomenon. To start unraveling this thread, we need to delve into the etymology of Hamas. In Arabic, Hamas translates to fervor or enthusiasm. This term, evocative of passionate zeal, aptly characterizes the political and militant group known for its staunch stance against Israel. However, when we dig into the biblical Hebrew, the plot thickens. In this ancient language, Hamas, or more accurately, Samh, Chamas, carries a starkly different connotation. It is frequently translated as violence, often of a severe kind involving theft, usurpation, and other forms of wrongdoing. The first instance of this word in the Bible appears in Genesis 6:11, which states, "The earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence." Hamas. This usage paints a picture of a world engulfed in moral decay, an interpretation that starkly contrasts with the word's modern connotations of political fervor. What makes this linguistic connection more intriguing is its frequency and context in the biblical text. The term Hamas appears in over 40 passages, often in scenarios depicting extreme human wickedness and divine retribution. For instance, in Psalm 7:16, the word is used to describe a scenario of evil turning back upon the perpetrator. His mischief returns upon his own head, and on his own skull, his violence, Hamas, descends. This dual meaning of Hamas, enthusiasm in modern Arabic and violence in ancient Hebrew, raises questions about the nature of historical and linguistic coincidences. Could it be mere happenstance that a group known for its contentious role in Middle Eastern politics shares its name with a term used in biblical times to represent violence and moral corruption? Or is there a deeper, perhaps divinely orchestrated significance to this linguistic overlap? When exploring this connection, it's crucial to consider the broader historical and cultural contexts. The Middle East has long been a crucible of linguistic and cultural intermingling. The languages of this region, including Arabic and Hebrew, have evolved over millennia, absorbing and reflecting the myriad cultural and political shifts. The word Hamas thus becomes a symbol of these complex interrelations, embodying diverse meanings across time and space. In examining this linguistic bridge, it's also essential to acknowledge the interpretative challenges. Language, especially when it concerns ancient texts, is often subject to varied translations and interpretations. The translation of Hamas as violence in the Bible is itself an interpretive choice, one among several possible renditions of an ancient term. This multiplicity of meanings adds layers to our understanding of both the biblical texts and the contemporary political entity. Moreover, the use of similar words in different contexts and times can lead to fascinating, though potentially misleading, correlations. While it's tempting to draw direct lines between the biblical Hamas and the modern-day organization, such connections should be approached with caution. The similarity in names might be nothing more than a linguistic coincidence, yet it opens the door to deeper reflections on the relationship between historical narratives and current events. Biblical prophecies and historical context. The tapestry of human history is often colored by the intertwining threads of religious prophecy and real-world events. This is particularly evident when examining the biblical prophecies in the context of the Middle East's tumultuous history. The word Hamas while a term for a contemporary political movement also finds an echo in ancient scriptures, adding a layer of complexity to its interpretation. The biblical narrative, especially in the books of Deuteronomy and Jeremiah, is replete with prophecies that have long been subjects of scholarly debate and religious contemplation. These texts, often cryptic and layered with meaning, have been interpreted and reinterpreted through the lens of subsequent historical events. In Deuteronomy, we encounter a prophecy that speaks of the dispersion and eventual gathering of the people of Israel. Then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Deuteronomy 33. This verse has been seen by many as a divine promise of return and restoration, a prophecy that many believe was fulfilled with the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948. This return after millennia of diaspora is not just a cornerstone of Jewish faith, but also a pivotal event in world history, reshaping geopolitical landscapes and redefining cultural identities. Jeremiah, known as the weeping prophet for his laments over the fate of his people, offers more insights into this divine plan. His prophecies often speak of a period of great tribulation for the people of Israel, a time of suffering and hardship that would precede their eventual deliverance. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Jeremiah 37. This prophecy has been interpreted as foretelling the struggles that would accompany the return of the Jewish people to their homeland. However, these prophecies and their fulfillment are not just matters of religious faith. They have tangible, real-world implications. The return of the Jewish people to Israel was not a peaceful or uncontested process. It was marked by conflict, suffering, and ongoing strife, much of it centered around the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Hamas, as a significant player in this conflict, becomes a part of this narrative, whether by coincidence or some see it as divine design. The historical context of these prophecies is crucial. The Middle East has been a crossroads of civilizations for millennia, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, the birth of major religions, and countless wars and conflicts. Each event, each era, adds another layer of interpretation to these ancient texts. For instance, the Babylonian exile, a pivotal moment in Jewish history, is often seen as a precursor to the prophecies of return found in Jeremiah and Deuteronomy. The exile and subsequent return of the Jewish people to their homeland in ancient times set a historical precedent that many see echoed in modern events. The significance of these prophecies in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict cannot be understated. For many, they provide a divine justification for the establishment and expansion of the state of Israel. For others, they are a source of contention, a narrative that conflicts with their historical and territorial claims. In this heated milieu, Hamas, with its own religious and political agenda, becomes a symbol of resistance to what they perceive as the fulfillment of these prophecies. Furthermore, the interpretation of these prophecies often depends on one's perspective. For believers, they are a testament to the enduring truth and relevance of the Bible. For skeptics, they are ancient texts being used to justify modern political agendas. And for historians and political scientists, they are a fascinating example of how religious narratives can shape and be shaped by historical events. The return to the promised land, prophecy, and reality. The narrative of the Jewish people's return to their ancestral homeland, as foretold in biblical prophecies, juxtaposes ancient faith with contemporary geopolitics, creating a tapestry rich in history and complexity. This return, prophesied in religious texts and realized in modern times, is not just a historical event, but a fulcrum upon which balances a multitude of religious, cultural, and political dynamics. Biblical prophecies, particularly those found in books like Ezekiel and Isaiah, paint vivid pictures of this return. Ezekiel speaks of bones coming to life, symbolizing the revival and regathering of the Jewish people. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. I will put my spirit in you and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Ezekiel 37, 12, 14. Similarly, Isaiah foretells a gathering of the Jewish diaspora. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Isaiah 11:12. These prophetic visions, steeped in metaphor and divine promise, have been central to Jewish hope and identity through centuries of dispersion. Fast forward to the 20th century, the formation of the State of Israel in 1948 marked a watershed moment in Jewish history, perceived by many as the materialization of these ancient prophecies. The establishment of Israel was not just a political act, it was imbued with profound religious and historical significance, symbolizing a return to a land that held deep spiritual and ancestral connections for the Jewish people. However, this return was far from a simple fulfillment of divine prophecy. It occurred in a region fraught with complex historical claims, cultural diversity, and political contention. The land of Israel-Palestine had been home to various peoples and cultures over the centuries, including a significant Arab population. The establishment of Israel led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs, a tragedy known as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic. This event set the stage for the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a struggle that continues to shape the geopolitics of the region. Enter Hamas. Founded in 1987, Hamas emerged as a key player in the Palestinian resistance against Israeli occupation. The group, whose name inadvertently echoes the biblical term for violence, has been at the forefront of the struggle for Palestinian self-determination. Its actions, often violent and controversial, have been both condemned and supported in various quarters. For some, Hamas represents a legitimate resistance against what they view as the unjust fulfillment of a religious prophecy at the expense of the Palestinian people. For others, Hamas is seen as a violent impediment to peace in the region, a group that challenges the realization of a prophecy they hold dear. The return of the Jewish people to Israel, therefore, is not just a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, but a deeply contentious and complex historical process. It intersects with narratives of displacement, resistance, and ongoing conflict. The historical and contemporary realities of this return challenge simplistic interpretations of ancient prophecies. They demand a nuanced understanding of how religious narratives intertwine with the harsh realities of political and cultural conflict. This chapter of history also raises profound questions about the nature of prophecy and its role in shaping human events. Does the establishment of Israel signify a divine plan coming to fruition, or is it a case of historical circumstances interpreted through the lens of religious belief? How do we reconcile the spiritual significance of this event for millions of Jews with the suffering and displacement experienced by Palestinians? The Ramah prophecies, violence and divine plans. In the labyrinth of biblical prophecies, the term Ramah stands out, not just for its frequent appearance, but for the weighty connotations it carries, those of violence and extreme wrongdoing. This word, akin in sound to Hamas, finds itself at the heart of various prophetic passages, creating a nexus of interpretation that spans from ancient texts to contemporary geopolitical realities. The term Ramah, in its original Hebrew form, often denotes extreme forms of violence and evil. It's a word steeped in the imagery of chaos, moral corruption, and divine judgment. For instance, in the book of Hosea, it is used to describe a society in moral decay. They are all adulterers, burning like an oven. On the day of our king, the princes have made him sick, inflamed with wine. He stretched out his hand with scoffers, for they have made ready their heart like an oven. Hosea 7:4-6. In this context, Ramah serves as a metaphor for societal degradation, a warning against the consequences of moral turpitude. This concept of Ramah being linked to violence and social upheaval can be seen as echoing through the centuries, finding relevance in the contemporary narrative of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The inception and actions of Hamas, particularly its violent resistance against Israel, can be perceived as a modern-day embodiment of Ramah. This is not to suggest a direct prophetic link, but rather to highlight how ancient words and ideas can find resonance in modern events. Delving deeper, The prophecies that mention Ramah often come with an undertone of divine judgment and retribution. They are typically set in contexts where societies have strayed from moral and divine laws, leading to inevitable consequences. For example, in Jeremiah, the term is used in the midst of prophecies concerning the Babylonian exile, a period of great suffering and upheaval for the Jewish people. Thus says the Lord, a voice is heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children because they are not. Jeremiah 31:15. Here, Ramah symbolizes a place of deep sorrow and loss, indicative of the profound impact of societal and moral collapse. In the context of Hamas and its role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Ramah prophecies can be seen as reflective of the broader themes of violence and struggle that have characterized the region's history. Hamas, in its struggle against what it views as Israeli occupation, embodies a form of Ramah, the violence born out of conflict and resistance. At the same time, the actions of Hamas have often been met with severe responses from Israel, creating a cycle of violence and retribution that echoes the themes of divine judgment found in the prophecies. The intertwining of Ramah and Hamas also brings to the fore the complex relationship between divine plans and human actions. For those who see historical events through the lens of biblical prophecy, the emergence of a group like Hamas and the violence it entails might be interpreted as part of a divine plan, a piece in the puzzle of human history as ordained by prophetic vision. However, such interpretations are fraught with theological and ethical complexities. They raise questions about the nature of divine will, the role of free will, and the moral implications of interpreting contemporary conflicts through ancient texts, Lebanon, Jerusalem, and the prophecies. The biblical landscape is rich with symbols and metaphors, each carrying deep historical and spiritual significance. Among these, the references to Lebanon and Jerusalem hold a special place, intertwining with prophecies and historical narratives to create a tapestry of meaning that stretches from ancient texts to the complexities of modern geopolitics. Lebanon, in the biblical context, is often associated with purity and sanctity. This interpretation arises from the Hebrew root of the word Lebanon, NVNBL, which is Lavan, NBL, meaning white. In biblical symbolism, white often represents purity and holiness, which aligns with the description of Jerusalem as a city of divine presence and spiritual significance. Jerusalem, often referred to as the City of God, is depicted as a beacon of sanctity and a focal point of divine activity in the world. The connection between Lebanon and Jerusalem, therefore, is not just geographical but deeply symbolic, representing the ideal of spiritual purity and divine connection. This symbolic interpretation gains further depth when considering the prophetic texts. The prophets often use Jerusalem and its surroundings as metaphors for larger spiritual truths and divine plans. For instance, the prophet Isaiah speaks of a time when the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the highest of the mountains. It will be exalted above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. Isaiah 2:2. This imagery of elevation and centrality not only highlights Jerusalem's physical location, but also its spiritual status as a center of divine revelation and guidance. The connection between Lebanon, Jerusalem, and Hamas emerges through the lens of these prophecies and their interpretations in the context of modern events. The prophet Habakkuk, for example, speaks of violence and conflict, which some have interpreted as alluding to the struggles surrounding Jerusalem and its environs, including the activities of Hamas. Look at the nations and watch, and be utterly amazed. For I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told. Habakkuk 1:5. This prophecy, with its themes of upheaval and divine intervention, resonates with the ongoing conflict in the region, where the struggle over Jerusalem remains a central issue. The role of Hamas in this context is complex. On one hand, its actions and ideology represent a challenge to the idea of Jerusalem as a city of peace and spiritual purity. The group's history of violence and its stance against Israel's existence stand in stark contrast to the biblical imagery of Jerusalem as a place of divine peace and reconciliation. On the other hand, for its supporters, Hamas is seen as a defender of Palestinian rights and a resistance movement against what they perceive as an occupation of sacred land. This duality reflects the broader conflict over Jerusalem, a city revered by multiple faiths, each with its own historical claims and spiritual narratives, current realities, and future implications. As we navigate the intricate layers of biblical prophecy and contemporary geopolitical landscapes, the role of entities like Hamas and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict present a vivid tapestry of current realities interwoven with ancient narratives. These realities, grounded in the present-day Middle East, carry with them significant implications for the future, shaping perceptions, policies, and the unfolding of events on a global scale. Today's Middle East is a region where history is alive, where ancient cities like Jerusalem stand as enduring symbols of faith and conflict. In this landscape, Hamas has emerged as a significant player, its actions and ideologies deeply rooted in the historical and religious context of the region. As a political and militant entity, Hamas's stance and activities often reflect the broader tensions and struggles of the Palestinian people, mirroring their aspirations, frustrations, and resistance against what they perceive as occupation and injustice. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, particularly in the Gaza Strip, is a stark reminder of the complexities and challenges in achieving peace in the region. The repeated cycles of violence, the suffering of civilians, and the deep-seated animosities underscore the urgent need for a sustainable and just resolution. However, the path to peace is fraught with obstacles, from political divisions and ideological differences to historical grievances and competing national narratives. In this context, the role of biblical prophecies becomes both fascinating and contentious. For many, these ancient texts provide a divine lens through which to view current events, offering a sense of purpose and destiny amidst the chaos. For others, the application of these prophecies to modern-day conflicts is a source of concern, potentially fueling extremism and hindering efforts towards peace and reconciliation. Looking ahead, the implications of these realities extend beyond the immediate region. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the role of groups like Hamas within it have global ramifications, influencing international politics, security dynamics, and interfaith relations. The conflict remains a potent symbol of broader struggles between nations and cultures, often reflecting deeper issues of identity, sovereignty, and justice. Moreover, the evolving nature of this conflict, with its shifts in political alliances, technological advancements in warfare, and changing public opinions, poses new challenges and opportunities. The rise of social media and digital platforms, for example, has transformed the way narratives are constructed and disseminated, allowing for a more diverse range of voices, but also the potential for misinformation and polarization. The future implications of these realities are multifaceted. On one hand, there is the potential for increased violence and instability, as unresolved grievances and ongoing struggles continue to fuel the conflict. On the other hand, there lies the possibility of new paths to peace, driven by changing regional dynamics, international diplomacy, and grassroots initiatives. In navigating these future implications, several key factors will play a critical role. The first is the leadership and policies of the involved parties, including Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and regional and global powers. Their decisions and strategies will significantly shape the course of the conflict and the prospects for peace. Second, the role of international institutions and the global community will continue to be crucial. The United Nations, the European Union, and other international bodies have a significant part to play in mediating the conflict, providing humanitarian aid, and upholding international law. The interplay of faith, history, and politics in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a long-standing and deeply rooted struggle, presents a unique intersection of faith, history, and politics. This interplay is significantly emblematic in the actions and ideologies of Hamas, a key player in the conflict. Understanding this triad of influences is crucial to grasping the complexities of the ongoing tensions and the challenges in achieving a lasting peace in the region. Religion plays a profound role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For many Israelis and Jews worldwide, the land of Israel is not just a homeland, but a fulfillment of biblical prophecy, a sacred space promised by God. This religious sentiment is deeply woven into the national identity and political narrative of Israel. Conversely, for Palestinians, including those aligned with Hamas, the land holds significant Islamic and cultural heritage. Jerusalem in particular is a city of immense religious significance, not only to Judaism, but also to Islam and Christianity. The religious narratives, therefore, are not just background motifs, but active drivers in the politics and ideologies of the region. The historical claims to the land of Israel-Palestine are complex and multifaceted. This land has seen the rise and fall of empires, the migration of peoples, and the birth of major world religions. For the Jewish people, the history of exile and diaspora culminates in a return to a land they have long seen as rightfully theirs. For Palestinians, the history is one of continuous presence and connection to the land, disrupted by the establishment of the State of Israel. Hamas, born out of this historical context, positions itself as a defender of Palestinian rights and land. The group's narrative is deeply entrenched in the historical experience of displacement and resistance. The political aspect of the conflict is as intricate as its historical and religious counterparts. It involves a web of domestic, regional, and international politics. The policies of Israeli governments towards settlements, security, and Palestinian statehood have varied over time, often reflecting the internal political landscape of Israel. For Palestinians, the split between the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza represents differing political approaches and visions for the future. Hamas's governance of Gaza and its stance towards Israel significantly influence the political dynamics of the conflict. Moreover, regional players like Iran, Egypt, and others, along with international powers, have vested interests and influence in the conflict, each bringing their own agendas and perspectives. The path to resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is fraught with challenges. It requires navigating the delicate balance between religious beliefs, historical narratives, and political realities. Any sustainable solution must acknowledge and address the deep-seated religious and historical connections both sides have to the land. It also needs to consider the political aspirations and security concerns of both Israelis and Palestinians. The role of international community and regional players in facilitating dialogue and negotiations is vital. Moreover, addressing the humanitarian crisis, particularly in Gaza, and fostering an environment conducive to peace and coexistence is crucial.